This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
And welcome to the program. I'm Roby Brock. This past week, Governor Asa Hutchinson has laid more foundation for his health reform proposal known as Arkansas Works. He also moved forward with expanding a pilot program to drug test welfare recipients, and some lawmakers want an upcoming special session to consider items beyond health care. Joining me to talk politics is Republican State Senator Jeremy Hutchinson of Little Rock and Democratic State Representative Clarke Tucker, also of Little Rock. Thanks to both of y'all for being here.
Thank you, Roby. Thanks for having us.
Let's begin with the Arkansas Works program, the governor's version of Medicaid expansion, the end of the private option. There's a lot of ways that you can skin that cat and call that. The votes are likely there for a 50% plus one vote to approve the policy portion of this, which is what the special session will address. I'll start with you, Senator Hutchinson. What's it going to take to move Republicans to vote for the appropriation on this, the 75% threshold?
Well, I think there's two arguments that could be made to try to convince a handful of current Republican senators who are saying they won't vote for the appropriation. One is an argument, do you really think we ought to be making policy decisions in the budgetary process? By voting against a DHS budget or a Medicaid budget, that's far bigger implications than one specific policy or another. And does it set a really bad precedent if we're beginning to vote against entire agencies' budgets because of one policy that we may or may not like?
Which has been done before.
It's certainly not without precedence, but
right.
I don't think.
And the second point is what?
The second point is looking at the alternative budget. When I think you look at how devastating it would be to end this right now, at least, I think it'll be very hard pressed for members who may in their heart of hearts think this is a wrong decision, but they have to look at the state, its people, the budget, higher ed, highways, just basic services, education. You go through the list, it'll all be cut, and that I think may give people pause once they realize the full ramifications of voting against a DHS budget.
Representative Tucker, it seems like the Democrats are wanting the governor to play a little footsie with them. They're not just jumping right out there and saying I'm 100% on board, although they've thrown some caution out there. What's it going to take to move Democrats to the governor's side on Arkansas Works?
I think the biggest thing is just clarity for what the program ultimately will be. We have draft legislation this week, so that helps clarify. And I think just as we get closer to the session, exactly what it's going to include. I think Democrats also want to make sure that the program, which most people agree has been a positive for the state, although certainly not everyone, but Democrats want to make sure it's going to stay in place if we pass some law that requires a waiver that the federal government doesn't ultimately grant. And so we want to make sure the program stays in place, figure out what the changes are from the private option to Arkansas Works, and just get that clarity.
Do either of you see the opportunity or the possibility of horse trading? I mean, for lack of a better word of saying it, but I mean, what Jane English basically got some major policy change in another direction on workforce reform when Governor Beebe was in office for her vote on the private option. Do you see anything like that happening?
You never know what might happen at the Capitol. And I think if Democrats were to try to shoot for something like that, it would be something that would be related. So it wouldn't be total horse trading on one unrelated issue for another. But if there are tweaks to the private option for Arkansas Works that affect, working class Arkansans, then maybe there could be some way they could be made whole on another program.
The governor who bears your name, will he be up for this?
I agree with Representative Tucker. I think could be adjustments. There's negotiating, certainly. I don't think you'll see any traditional horse trading where you take something that's unrelated and promise to do this for that, a quid pro quo. I don't think that will exist. I think he believes, as do the majority of Republican legislators and I believe Democrat legislators, this is good policy, and that this not only helps Arkansans, but it saves our budget and allows us to do tax cuts and allows us to accomplish a lot of conservative principles, including encouraging work. So if that's that good of a policy, I don't think you should have to, nor will he do horse trading to get the votes.
Let's talk about another topic that might not make as much mathematical sense on this. Earlier this week, Governor Hutchinson said he wants to expand drug testing beyond a pilot program for those that are receiving jobless benefits, perhaps some other benefits too. According to published reports, we're going to spend nearly $1.5 million to perhaps save $40,000. There's some competing logic on this. I'll let you go first, Senator Hutchinson. Defend that whole process of making people show what they have to do in terms of drug testing.
Well, I think it's program integrity. These programs are set up with we have the prerequisite requirement that people are actively looking for employment, and that we will give them a hand up, but they have to do their part and be looking for employment. They can't just sit at home and collect.
You think the costs are justified, though? That
I
even
do,
though
because
it's not a good return on the dollar.
If you can't pass an employer's drug test, which virtually all employers require, then you are not holding up your end of the bargain. You are not actively seeking a job. And the state has a right to enforce our program integrity. And that is a big part of it. Is if you're using drugs, you're not performing your end of the bargain by actively seeking jobs, and we have a right to enforce that.
Representative Tucker, is it punitive?
It is, and you asked Senator Hutchinson to defend it. I could defend the politics of it because it does make sense politically to drug test welfare recipients, but in reality, the numbers are just clear as day, as you indicate. And to take a neighboring state in Mississippi, they enacted a similar program, and over the first 5 months of their program, they had 3,600 people come in the door, and they had 2 test positive for drugs. And so the math just doesn't make sense. I basically view it as government growth and making government less efficient. And so,
Let me challenge the math, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
There's been other states that have tried this, and those numbers are accurate. But what you can't calculate is the deterrent factor. I mean, people may realize, hey, I may be tested, I better get clean. So you may not catch people who are actually dirty, but you may in fact deter people, which is all the intent. We want people not to do drugs, certainly when they're on government welfare, and instead be seeking jobs. And that, I'm not saying it may, but you can't calculate that in these studies.
That's true. And I certainly concede that, but at the same time, and I agree with program integrity, but at the same time, you just have to do what's smart a lot of times, or what's practical or pragmatic. And, I'd be for drug testing legislators, to get our paychecks. But
a very thoughtful potential concept right there. All right, we're going to take a commercial break. We're going to be back with a little bit more right after this. I'm with Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, Representative Clarke Tucker. More right after this. Welcome back to Talk Business and Politics. I'm with Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, Representative Clarke Tucker. Representative Tucker, I'm going to come to you first. You are pushing for the governor to consider adding into a call for a special session. He says it's probably not going to happen in the healthcare session, to regulate dark money. Tell me what you're trying to do.
I'm just trying to open up the process so the people of Arkansas know who's trying to influence the outcome of elections for candidates in Arkansas. And so the regulations that I am working for would not regulate the amount of money that anybody could spend or what they say. All it would do is say, if you're going to buy political advertisements in Arkansas to speak against or for a particular candidate, then you have to file a report with the Secretary of State so the people of Arkansas can know who's buying those ads and
Why
who's
would
trying.
Anybody be opposed to that?
I'm not opposed to it.
You think there'd be bipartisan support for this?
I think there is. There may not. It remains to be seen whether there's enough bipartisan support to get it out of the legislature. Yeah. But just last year, I had one provision that got out of the House, and in order for it to get out of the House with Democratic support, there has to be bipartisan support given the numbers, and so I do think there is.
Senator, your Judiciary Committee that you chair is going to be taking up a new look at how we elect judges, judicial candidates at the appellate level. Merit selection is part of that conversation. Tell me where you're going to go with those hearings.
Well, Amendment 80, which the voters passed years ago, allows for the legislature to reconsider at any time and propose an amendment for merit selection. So this hearing, we're going to discuss the different options, what other states are doing around the country, and see if we can develop some consensus. And if we can develop a consensus on what may or may not be a better alternative method for selecting our both Supreme Court and appellate judges, then I think we'll move forward. But this is a beginning step of, can we develop that type of a consensus?
Do we have a problem with the judges that we've elected right now at the appellate level? I mean, I don't think that we have anybody that's unqualified. I mean, you can make your arguments you don't like someone, but...
Well, we're both lawyers, so we're going to agree with you completely. There's not one bad judge in the state.
Yeah.
There really aren't. I don't have a problem with, but the process, I think, has become, as Representative Tucker is trying to address, nobody likes watching. When you're running to be an impartial judge, you can't say I'm a Republican or a Democrat. You can't take any position on any issues out there because you may end up hearing them. And so it ends up becoming a name ID contest or dark money has a overly influential.
So here's a thought that I have had. So how about if the joint judiciary committees of the legislature were to do what we do at the federal level and interview these candidates that are running for these appellate judges and let them talk about a couple of cases they've already decided and kind of what went into their decision-making process and how they interpreted the Constitution and made those particular decisions. I think you would get media coverage from that. You could record it and hang it out there in perpetuity, and you would see a little bit more conversation about how judges make decisions in that process. And you could still elect judges and pass Representative Tucker's dark money bill, and then we'd have sunshine on out where the money's coming from.
I'd like that idea a lot, especially as chairman of judiciary. I think that'd be a fun exercise.
I'll flesh that out a little bit deeper, and I'll come back to you.
What about judges, though, judge candidates who've never been judged before?
I think you pick some lawyers and cases that they have worked on. They'd have to recuse from them if they were to become judges anyway. So there you go.
Okay.
I've thought this through.
We'll add that to the discussion.
Senator Hutchinson, Representative Tucker, thank you both for being here. Appreciate you very much.
Thank you.